The Bobcat Outsider is brought to you by Adventures of Shane and Laura. Come join the fun as we explore Montana, the national parks, and beyond.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Bobcat Outsider, the YouTube channel that brings you Bobcat football from a fan perspective. I'm your host, Shane Driscoll. Last week, the Bobcats had a bye, and this week they're heading out to Grand Forks to take on the Fighting Hawks of North Dakota. We'll talk about that game and the bigger picture in this week's episode of the Bobcat Outsider. In this week's Rewind, I just want to make a quick observation, and that is that the Bobcat loss to Sac State was bookended by losses by Eastern Washington and Montana to Sac State by 3 and 4 scores respectively. That should give a little bit of context to the loss that the Bobcats had. Of course, you never want to lose a game, but I think we're seeing that Sac State is a real contender this year, much like UC Davis was last year. Here's what Coach Choate had to say about that.
Sacramento State, who evidently is a pretty good football team, you know. And so I tried to tell you guys that a couple weeks ago, but you didn't want to listen to me. So any other questions?
The clarification of the strength of Sac State that we saw over this weekend, along with 3 more losses in the top 10, helped the Cats ride the bye week from number 12 in the polls all the way up to number 9. The Bobcats travel to Grand Forks this week to take on the North Dakota Fighting Hawks. They play in a place called the Alara Center, and it's kind of a dome-like structure, but it's just an enormous convention center, and football is really just kind of a part of what this place does. It has a capacity of roughly 12,000 when it's hosting a football game. North Dakota went undefeated in 2016 to share the conference championship with the Eastern Washington Eagles. That was the year before they started their transition to the Missouri Valley Conference for football, which they will complete next year in 2020. But don't be fooled, this is a conference game, and it will count toward Montana State's conference record. Here's what Coach Choate had to say about that.
It is a conference game. So thanks for pointing that out. Yeah. You want to talk about that, or should we just hold off? I mean, I'm probably going to get fined for talking about our scheduling stuff. So it's a conference game for us. And I pointed that out to our players on Sunday. I make sure they understand the significance of this game for us. And also pointed out that there's been a couple teams that have rolled out there to North Dakota and maybe not understood the importance of that and paid the price. And so, I mean, this is a huge, huge game for us. I mean, huge game for us in terms of with the way this season sets up, coming off the bye week, getting that taste out of our mouth from that Sacramento State.
The Fighting Hawks have had 2 seasons in 1 this year, winning all 3 of their home games, and their road games accounted for all 3 of their losses. Their last road game actually being a win against Cal Poly, their first road win this year. Their home wins, including a win against Sam Houston State, number 24 at the time, and UC Davis, who was number 12 at the time that the Hawks beat them. Interestingly, the North Dakota quarterback Nate Ketteringham actually played for the Sacramento State Hornets before he transferred in 2017. Ketteringham had to wait out a year before he was eligible to play for the Hawks. Also, Mikey Greibel, the return specialist for the Hawks, is the younger brother of former Bobcat Mitch Greibel. The Hawks rank near the middle of the FCS with 372 yards of total offense per game, and that's just behind Norfolk State. But don't let that fool you. Those numbers are definitely skewed, with 4 out of the 7 teams that the Hawks have played being in the top 25 so far this year. Where the Hawks have seemed to shine is in that pass defense, ranking number 22 in the FCS in passing yards per game. Those defensive backs really showed out in that win against UC Davis. Watching their game against Cal Poly, it looks like the Hawks run 3 down linemen with at least 1 guy that stands up on the end and rushes the edge, if not 2. Most of the time, they're coming at you out of a 4-3-4 package, although sometimes they'll give you the 4-2-5 in that nickel package, depending on the down and distance and the offensive alignment. On offense, you got to watch out for number 4, Brock Boltman, who they'll bring in to run out of the Wildcat package. But it's not just when he starts out behind center. They'll motion him into the backfield and try to catch you sleeping in a very similar way to the Bobcats. The Hawks escaped San Luis Obispo by the skin of their teeth, much like the Bobcats did a couple weeks ago. The Mustangs dropped an easy pick on the Hawks' go-ahead drive, and UND converted on a 4th and 2 for a touchdown. Now let's talk about some key matchups. In this football game, I see one major key matchup: the MSU run game versus the front 7 of UND. The Bobcats really need to make their money here if they want to come home with the win. All right, now let's talk some players to know. Senior quarterback Nate Ketteringham wears number 8 and hails from San Diego. Again, the Cats have faced Nate Ketteringham when he played for Sac State. The first time was in 2015 when he was a true freshman and 3 other Hornet quarterbacks had gone out. Ketteringham struggled in that game. In 2016, the Bobcats faced him again, this time in Sacramento, and in a breakout game for Chris Murray. But this time, Ketteringham would be ready, as he passed for over 300 yards on the Bobcats, and the Hornets won that game. He's an efficient passer, completing 62% of his attempts, and he can also run the ball, and he can run it with physicality at times. Number 31, senior Noah Wansick, leads the team in receiving yards. He hails from Jonestown, North Dakota, and he's continuing his leadership in receiving yards from last year. Again, watch where number 4 is at all times on offense. That's Brock Boltman, and he might start out over at the wide receiver position, and they might motion him into the backfield. You got to watch and see who that is they're motioning into the backfield, because if it's him, 9 times out of 10, they're going to snap it to him, and he's going to take the snap on a direct run. But he can also pass it too, and from time to time, they will do just that. On defense, watch out for number 44, the senior linebacker Donnell Rogers, who hails from Woodbury, Minnesota. He leads the team with 74 tackles, and he also led the team last year. And now for some keys to the game. I think that this game's going to shape up great for the Bobcats. On offense, I think that this is a great opportunity for the Bobcats to get that run game back going. It's going to be key for the Hawks to limit that run game if they want a chance to win this one. On the other side of the ball, the Cats once again need to lean on their strongest position group, and that's the D-line. Those guys really need to show up, harass Ketteringham, and stop the run if the Bobcats are going to win this one. The game kicks off at 11 Mountain Time and will be carried by SWX. That's going to be ABC in Western Montana and SWX in Billings. Streaming should be available through the Pluto app. And now it's time for Across the Divide, the segment where we take a look at our neighbors over the hill. The Grizz come off their bye week to get dominated by Sac State in Sacramento. This hurt the Grizz national standing, and it gave Kevin Thompson an opportunity to show what he can do compared to the then frontrunner for Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year, Dalton Sneed. Thompson came out the better, earning National Offensive Player of the Week honors, helping the Hornets to a 49-22 victory. The Grizz fall 5 spots to number 10 in the Stats FCS Top 25 poll. And now it's time for an outsider's eye view, a broader context of the Big Sky Conference and the FCS in general. Furman, Nichols, and NC-A&T joined the Grizz with upset losses in the top 10, making room for the Cats to move from that 12 spot to the number 9 spot, the only team surpassing the Cats this week, allowing the Cats to use their bye week to move from the number 12 spot to the number 9 spot. The only team passing the Cats this week is Sac State, who had still been ranked behind them even after defeating the Bobcats and Bozeman. Nichols getting shut out by Sam Houston State, which is a team that North Dakota beat at home this year. And now it's time for Outsider Opinions. And this week's opinion is that, and this has been said by Coach Choate, and so I'm just stating this is actually his quote, not mine. The backup quarterback is always the most popular guy in town. The grass is always going to be greener, no matter who your quarterback is, because once you get to see them in live action and the stakes are high, you get to scrutinize them with a much finer tooth comb. It's important to recognize that when you have a team that's elite in so many different ways, if the quarterback's going to be within the top 25% of your team, he's going to be one of the best, 4 quarterbacks in the league. And if the Bobcats have one of the 4 best quarterbacks in the league, they're definitely going to win the Big Sky Conference, if not the national championship. One thing that we as fans really underestimate is the gap in knowledge between the head coach of our football team and ourselves. Whether it be actual football knowledge or just specific insider information, it's harder for us to appreciate how much more they know about and how much better they're able to evaluate the quarterbacks that they're putting under center. When we say, why is Brugman in when we have Chris Murray sitting there waiting? Or why is Murray or Troy Anderson or Casey Bauman in when we have Rovig on the sidelines? Or why is Rovig in when we have Blake Thielen and Casey Beltran sitting on the sidelines? What we don't understand is that once the next guy comes in, it's going to be much more obvious to us what all of their flaws are. And so we just have to take a breath and think, the coach probably knows what he's doing when he evaluates this talent. In the end, Coach Choate gives us a lot of opportunities to look at a lot of different quarterbacks, and generally we see, okay, well, while we like their play, maybe they weren't the best quarterback on the team, or maybe Coach knew what he was doing when he had Troy Anderson in there at quarterback, when he had two other guys waiting on the sidelines. None of that is to say that I think that our current quarterback is not a good quarterback. I think that he has performed much better than the scrutiny that he has received. And I think that whenever the team loses, the quarterback is going to take the blame, or at least a significant chunk of the blame. It's just important to recognize that in our system, we have so many elite players that there's so much blame to go around beyond the quarterback. In other systems, yes, the quarterback has to be the guy, he has to be perfect in order for the team to do well. In our system, there are a lot of other people that have the opportunity to take the team on their back and just make it happen. So what do you think? Am I being a little bit too harsh on the critics of the quarterbacks of the football team? Let me know in the comments below. And now for the shout out of the week. If you aren't listening to the FCS Wedge, it's another great opportunity to listen to people who look at the FCS with a broader scope so you can kind of understand things outside of the Big Sky Conference. Do you need to get the word out about your organization, product, or event? If so, feature it on the Bobcat Outsider. My email address will be in the description below. As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Shane Driscoll. You can always find the most knowledgeable, best researched, and most thorough Bobcats and Big Sky coverage on Skyline Sports at SkylineSportsMontana.com. As always, the Bobcat Outsider is brought to you by Adventures of Shane and Laura. If you love Montana and the national parks, check out the YouTube channel that chronicles our adventures around Montana and beyond. If you liked the video, be sure to leave it a like. If you want to see more like it, click subscribe. I'll catch you next time, and until then, go Cats!